Hello again, everyone. I'm here to continue today with part 2 of the parable of the sower. And each week over the next 4 weeks, we're going to look at the 4 different types of soil that Jesus is talking about in the story: the path, the rocky soil, the thorns, and the good soil. Let's read the story again to begin. Matthew 13:3. A farmer went out to sow his seed, and as he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it didn't have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seeds fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plant. And still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Again today, as we talked in the introduction last week, there are 4 types of soil. There's those that are on the path, the rocky soil, the thorns, and the good soil. And what's interesting about this is Jesus will later go on to explain to us that he's not talking about dirt in our backyard or in our gardens. He's talking about conditions of a person's heart. He's talking about the path being the hard soil that's been walked upon. He's talking about the rocky soil, the soil that's not deep and has rocks beneath it where the roots can't grow very deep. He talks about the thorns that choke out the good plant. And then he talks about the good soil, which is the conditions of a good heart for hearing and receiving the gospel. This is what Jesus talks about. In verse 19, he explains, when anyone hears the message about the kingdom and doesn't understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path. I'm going to say that again. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and doesn't understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is Jesus' explanation of it. I want you to think about a moment about what a path is, especially when we relate to it on a farm or in a garden. The path is where either the tractors today or the people walk who are working on the garden or on the farm. And think about how hardened and compacted that dirt becomes. When seed is thrown along the path, it doesn't grow. It sits right on the top, and the birds, they come and eat it up because it doesn't have time to get into the soil and take root. The soil is too hard. When we think about conditions of a person's heart, and we think about hardened soil, Jesus is talking about the hardened heart that the message isn't able to penetrate. The person that comes to hear a message or a sermon or a minister and hear the word of the Lord, and they just go in there with the wrong attitude, with this sort of coldness and a hardness of heart. Proverbs 28:14 says, it warns us that whoever hardens their heart will fall into trouble. Whoever hardens their heart will fall into trouble. Proverbs also tells us in chapter 4, verse 23, that we're to guard our heart, for it's the wellspring of life. And so we're talking about this idea of the heart and this idea of being a hard heart. Well, we also need to compare that to this idea of that the heart can become soft as well. And I believe that's done through prayer. As we look in the same chapter, Jesus is talking about why he uses parables, and he's talking to his disciples, and he says this: you'll be ever hearing but never understanding. You'll be ever seeing but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. He's talking about the hardness of people's hearts to the message of the gospel and how they're not listening. They're hearing the words, but it's going in one ear and out the other. It's never applied to their life, and so the enemy comes in and he snatches those seeds of the gospel away from their life. If you're struggling with this and struggling with the hardness of your heart, or as a parent have a teen who seems to be struggling and their heart is becoming cold, they're hearing the message, they know what to say at church, they know the words to tell you, they know the answers to say to you, I want you to know this: there is hope. That God can melt away the hardened heart and turn it soft again. And as a parent, if you have a teen struggling with this, it's time to get down on your knees and pray for them. Pray that God will soften the heart. In that same verse 15, it says, otherwise they may see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. You know, all it takes is a softening and a turning to God and saying, I'm sorry. And he forgives even the hardest of hearts. You know, when we talk about soil, you know, God can cultivate that soil into good soil. If there's thorns in it, he can pull those. If there's rocks in it, he can take them out. And if the soil is hard, God can cultivate it and soften it into soft soil that can bear much fruit. And as we talk about prayer today, parents, I want to encourage you, if you're in a struggle with one of your teens, be down on your knees and pray every day that God softens the heart and cultivates their soil into soil that will bear much fruit. There is hope. Don't lose hope, parents. And teenagers, if you feel like your heart is hardening, watch what you're putting into your heart. And the moment you pray, God, soften my heart, he can touch your heart and life at any moment. Think about these things this week. And I pray that you'll have a blessed week.